He was supposed to be Brazil's next legendary goalkeeper. Big clubs wanted him. Fans idolized him. But behind the gloves was a secret so horrific it silenced a nation. This isn't a fall from grace. It's a descent into something darker. Stay till the end, because what happened off the pitch makes every save, every chant feel like a lie. In 2009, Bruno Fernandes de Souza was at the peak of his powers. Flamengo's fans roared his name across the Maracana. Scouts from Europe, including giants like AC Milan, jotted down his name with dollar signs in their eyes. He had everything: wealth, admiration, trophies, and a future that pointed toward legendary status. But what no one knew was that this hero of the pitch was nursing a secret, a relationship that he desperately wanted to bury. Eliza Samudio was the name he wanted the world to forget. But Eliza Samudio refused to vanish quietly. What began as a casual affair soon spiraled into a public scandal. Eliza Samudio was pregnant, and she made it clear that Bruno Fernandes de Souza was the father. She demanded acknowledgement, child support, and responsibility. But what she received in return was pressure, denial, and eventually unimaginable cruelty. Bruno's empire was beginning to tremble. His move to Europe hung in the balance. Sponsors started pulling away. His image, once untouchable, began to erode. And rather than confront the consequences of his actions, Bruno chose a path that would destroy his legacy and a human life. On June 5, 2010, Bruno Fernandes de Souza played his final match for Flamengo. He wore the jersey of Brazil's most beloved club for the last time, not knowing, or perhaps knowing too well, that he was about to vanish from the football world, not to Europe, but into infamy. Just 4 days later, Eliza Samudio disappeared. Her last known whereabouts? A trip to Bruno's house, supposedly to settle their disputes. But what she walked into was no negotiation. It was a death sentence. The plan had already been set in motion. Bruno, his cousin, his wife, and even a man known only as Bola, a former police officer turned hitman, all played their parts. Eliza Samudio was held captive, maltreated, and ultimately she kicked the bucket. But that wasn't the end. The child she bore, Bruno's son, was left in a favela, discarded like garbage, a defenseless infant clinging to life while his mother's remains disappeared into the jaws of dogs. The police cracked the case through a confession from Bruno's teenage cousin. The details he offered were not just incriminating, they were soul-shattering. Phone records, eyewitness accounts, and chilling testimonies unraveled the entire plot. Bruno Fernandes de Souza, the pride of Flamengo, the darling of Brazilian football, was no longer just a fallen idol. He was a life-taker. On July 7, 2010, just a month after his last match, he was arrested. In the blink of an eye, the boy who had once been hailed as Brazil's future became its shame. The courtroom became an arena for truth, horror, and disbelief. Every headline screamed betrayal. Every day brought more painful details. Eliza's family had no body to bury, no grave to mourn over, only court transcripts and media snippets to piece together her final moments. The sentence was delivered: 22 years and 3 months in prison. Justice, it seemed, had been served. But Brazil's justice system has a heartbeat of its own, erratic and often forgiving to those who wear celebrity-like armor. In 2017, Bruno Fernandes de Souza walked free. Not because he was proven innocent, not because he showed remorse, but because of a legal loophole. While his appeal was pending, he was released. And what did he do? He didn't hide. He didn't disappear. He returned to football. Boa Esporte, a second-division club, signed him, welcoming a man convicted of orchestrating the life-taking of the mother of his child. The backlash was volcanic. Sponsors abandoned the club. Fans protested. But the contract was signed, and Bruno stepped onto the pitch once more, as if the blood on his hands had been washed away by time. Only 5 matches later, the Supreme Court stepped in and ordered his return to prison. But the damage was irreversible. Bruno's temporary return revealed something deeply unsettling about the sport. That for some, talent was worth more than morality. That goals saved could somehow outweigh lives destroyed. This wasn't just about a goalkeeper. It was about a culture willing to pardon monsters for the sake of victory. Eliza Samudio became more than a victim. She became a symbol, a face among the over 1,300 women who were victims of femicide in Brazil in 2019 alone. Her life-taking wasn't just a singular event. It was a mirror held up to a society where violence against women often gets footnoted, buried beneath male redemption arcs. Bruno Fernandes de Souza didn't just unalive a woman. He challenged the boundaries of what society would tolerate in exchange for spectacle. The outrage didn't end with fans. Politicians, activists, and celebrities voiced their horror. But some still clung to the idea of forgiveness, of second chances. They argued that he had served his time, that redemption was a right. But for Eliza, there was no second chance, no redemption, no time left. Her story was reduced to a cautionary tale. Her son, a living reminder of the horrors his father unleashed. In interviews, Bruno never showed full remorse. He spoke of lost dreams, of the career that could have been, but rarely of Eliza. Rarely of the pain her family carried. Rarely of the baby he abandoned. His narrative centered on himself, on his fall, on his incarceration. It was the story of a man mourning his fame more than the life he took. The tragedy of Eliza Samudio became a backdrop to the greater tragedy of lost potential, at least in the eyes of those who still cheered his name. Football has long had a redemption problem. From match fixers to drug cheats to convicted criminals, the game often opens its arms wide to those who've sinned, so long as they can still perform. Bruno's story should have been a turning point, a line in the sand. But it wasn't. Even today, his name pops up in transfer rumors, in training sessions, in whispers of comeback. Each time, it reopens a wound that has never healed. For Flamengo, the club that once celebrated him, the decision to cut ties was swift but not painless. Supporters felt betrayed. Their chants now tasted bitter in their mouths. And yet, some still wore his jersey. Some still remembered his saves more than his sins. That duality, that moral fog, is the true indictment of the culture that allowed Bruno to believe he could get away with anything. And for the Brazilian justice system, Bruno's case exposed its many flaws. A life-taker walked free because of technicalities. A club thought it acceptable to give him a new contract. And a nation, heartbroken and angry, was forced to watch it all unfold. No football match could mask the stench of injustice. No clean sheet could wash away the blood. Bruno Fernandes de Souza's fall wasn't just about crime. It was about complicity, about the people who helped him, who kept his secrets, who lured Eliza Samudio to her death. It was about a society that at times is too quick to forgive and too slow to protect. It was about a child, innocent and abandoned, growing up in the shadow of a father whose legacy is soaked in tragedy. There are some stories that should end with a whistle, with cheers, with a trophy held aloft. This one ends with silence, with a missing body, with a legacy stained forever. The goalkeeper, who could have been Brazil's greatest, instead became its darkest shame. His gloves once caught dreams. Now they symbolize nightmares. And for as long as football remembers names like Pelé, Ronaldo, and Ronaldinho, it must also remember the name of Bruno Fernandes de Souza, not for his saves, but for what he destroyed. Because some red cards can't be rescinded, some fouls can't be forgiven, and some goals, no matter how glorious, can never be worth a life. Should talent ever excuse brutality? Can a jersey wipe away what a courtroom could not? Eliza Samudio's story deserves more than silence. It demands memory. So we ask you, should Bruno Fernandes de Souza ever be allowed near a football pitch again? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this make you think deeper about sport and justice, subscribe now. We tell the truths others skip.